This is the Conservative Crusader.
All right, so welcome back. This is the Conservative Crusader. We are joined now by a fierce fighter in the life movement here in Ohio. She is on the political side, the nonprofit side. She knows everything about Ohio politics. I think she's more of an expert on Ohio than I am at this point. Her biblical postings on Twitter have received worldwide attention and media attention and everything else. Joining us today is Lizzie Marbach, friend of the program, at Lizzie Marbach on Twitter. Lizzie, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Josh, thank you so much for having me, and I am doing pretty well. It's definitely been a crazy week, but I can't complain.
It definitely has been, just following it and covering it here on the show. So to clear the air, I did not introduce you as your former title as the Communications Director of Ohio Right to Life, but you're still a passionate anti-abortion activist here in Ohio, and we'll get to the fight in November here shortly. But before we get there, you were involved in some major controversy on Twitter with a congressman from the state of Ohio. I'll let you explain what happened.
Yes, well, I made the terrible and bigoted statement that there is no hope for any of us outside of faith in Jesus Christ alone, because I'm a Christian, and that's a core tenet of our faith. I tweeted that out last Tuesday, so a week ago, and to my shock, Congressman Miller responded saying that that was the most bigoted tweet that he had ever seen, and that it is a threat to religious liberty, and that I needed to delete it. So, it kind of just went crazy from there, and went viral at that point once the congressman responded.
Well, of course it did, because he's saying you're bigoted for saying a core tenet of your faith, which obviously isn't the case. So you haven't interacted with him on Twitter, and if you have, it's been positive. You worked in the organization you did. You were involved and actually endorsed him. Ohio Right to Life did in his campaign last time. And now he's coming out of nowhere and attacking you. Do you think there's an ulterior motive behind this in some way? Do you think it was the congressman himself even writing these attacks?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not completely sure. Like you said, every interaction that I've had with him has been positive. His wife, Emily, was on the board at Ohio Right to Life, so we've always had polite interactions as well. I can't say for sure who exactly wrote the tweet or what the background was, but either way, it was just completely insane for any American to take such an innocuous tweet that is very common amongst Christianity. Probably every single person who went to a Christian church on this past Sunday heard the same exact message. So for a conservative congressman to get so offended by such a statement is really just worrying and troublesome.
And I'm sure you've heard this already, but the fact he said religious freedom applies to every religion, this is bigoted, delete it, in the same message is just kind of contradictory, and I think it's hilarious. And I'm glad that you're not you weren't kind of silenced by him for it, and you stood your guns. So Ohio Right to Life released a statement on Monday in which they said that your departure was not due to the exchange. Oh yeah, you were fired from your job after this tweet, like 2 days. I forgot that part of the story. But was this related? Were you expecting to leave Ohio Right to Life? I mean, I thought you were doing great work. From what I heard, you were doing great work. So. Was this expected?
So yes and no. I agree that I wasn't fired completely because of the exchange with Max Miller. We had conversations. My boss and I have had conversations beforehand about me potentially leaving, just because I have a very different kind of communication style. Ohio Right to Life for a long time has been known as more of the establishment pro-life organization. They're very much stuck in the old school conservative way where you never step on any toes, never upset anybody or offend anybody, and you just kind of toe the party line to ensure that you still are able to keep your political influence at the state house. Whereas I am definitely not of that vein. I think that conservatives need to be bold. I think that we need to recognize what time it is, and that we have to just speak the truth plainly. And especially on the issue of abortion. With abortion, we're talking about murder. We're talking about the unjust killing of innocent human lives. And there's no room to mince our words around that. We have to speak truth with that subject specifically for the justice of the preborn. And so we really just had a disagreement on communication style and what was appropriate. And it kind of just came to a head that Monday before I tweeted everything out. And then on Thursday, so 2 days after the Miller tweet happened, my boss called me and said that the Miller tweet had become a distraction, but overall my social media use as a whole, my communication strategy as a whole is just incompatible with Ohio Right to Life, and that they had to let me go.
Now, this is just something I came up with off the top of my head. Did they know your communication strategy before you were hired as communications director? Or is this new news to them?
No, I was very upfront when I was interviewing, and even in the beginning, I let them know very quickly where I stood, what my communication style was, and the kind of messaging that I wanted to put forth. I did clarify that from the beginning. I've never made it a secret what I think that we should be messaging. I've always been very transparent along the way.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that you're open about, what your communication strategy is when you're going into a communications job. Lizzie Marbach's on the phone with us here. Lizzie Marbach on Twitter, Lizzie Marbach on Twitter. So, getting news now, it's actually sent to me. The American Accountability Foundation has filed an ethics complaint against Max Miller, the congressman you got in a spat with, obviously, for his outrageous demand, this is their exact press release, that Lizzie Marbach delete a tweet that simply expressed her Christian faith. So, asking the House to condemn this tweet and everything else. Do you think this is necessary?
I do, and here's the reason why. So the congressman did apologize to me, and I fully accept his apology. On a personal matter, I hold no animosity against him. I'd love to sit down, have dinner with the guy. Like I have nothing personally against him. But when we're talking about a greater scale here, a congressman who holds elected office demanded that a Christian delete and censors their religious beliefs. I do think that deserves greater scrutiny, and that people should look into it to ensure that this never happens again. Christianity is absolutely at risk as of late. There was just a gentleman who got arrested outside of a LGBT event for simply reading the Bible. Christians are getting targeted left and right day by day, and for a conservative to step in and join that is very concerning. We can't afford to allow Christians to continue to go down this path where we're being persecuted just for simply sharing our faith, not doing anything else. And so I do think that it's something that should be taken seriously, and I appreciate that they're making the ethics claim.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And that was my first thought when I heard the story is, yes, someone has to do something about this in Congress. There's no way this flies. So really quickly here, about Ohio Right to Life, and then we'll move on to just November. The Centennial is the organization you went to for your story about you getting fired, and they did a great job on that report. They're also reporting that an Ohio Right to Life board member, Mike McGuire, has worked as a lobbyist against a bill that would end abortion in the state of Ohio. I'm sure you know about this bill already. What's your reaction to this? And is this a surprise to you that this is even happening?
Unfortunately, it's not a surprise. I knew that it was happening as it was taking place. The reason why they're opposing the bill getting introduced is because they think that if we introduce any kind of legislation before the November ballot initiative, which we'll talk about later, they think that we're going to lose in November by trying to save babies' lives. But the problem with that political strategy is that there's real human lives that are on the line right now. There's babies that are being killed as I speak right now. And by saying, no, we had to wait until after November to bring forth any pro-life legislation, we're saying that the babies that are conceived in 2023 aren't worth protecting, that they are worthy collateral damage in the campaign against November. And that's just wrong. I think that if we believe that abortion is murder, then we should act accordingly. And so to see that they're opposing and trying to kill a bill before it's even able to be introduced is really disappointing. And I think that it should make every supporter of Ohio Right to Life really ask the question of what kind of organization are they supporting? Are they supporting an organization that really wants to end abortion? Or are they supporting an organization that's just looking for political influence?
And the bill was sponsored or written by End Abortion in Ohio. So if they haven't offered you a job yet, they probably should, because you're great at this. Um, so,
Well, thank you.
so this November, the biggest fight is going to happen. We have abortion rights officially on the Ohio ballot, where they're threatening the existence here. Give me just a second. But they're actually threatening. Sorry, I had another call coming through on the other line. All right, back to what I was saying. I apologize. This November, we have abortion rights on the ballot. It's going to actually enshrine abortion in Ohio's Constitution if it passes. Obviously, issue 1 on August failed. I'm not sure why, if people thought it was because of abortion or whatnot. How do we make sure this amendment, this constitutional amendment, doesn't meet the same fate as issue 1 and actually go on the wrong side?
Well, I think that we have to make sure that our voters aren't confused and that they know clearly what's at stake. This November, if the abortion lobby has their way, state-sanctioned murder will be enshrined into our Constitution, not into a piece of legislation that could be overturned, not a court decision, but into our Constitution, the document that's supposed to protect and uphold our most fundamental rights, beginning with the right to life. And now, if this passes, our Constitution will have murder enshrined in it. That is just completely insane. And I think that the only way that we can beat this is to speak the truth, tell Ohio voters what really is at stake, and the pure radicalism and extremity of what they're trying to bring into Ohio. This is on par with North Korea and China, their kind of abortion policy, where it's abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, zero restrictions. It would also bring in the gender ideology. It would enshrine sex change surgeries for minors, as well as the hormone blockers like Lupron that we know sterilize children and are extremely dangerous for kids to take. So it would bring all of this into Ohio and enshrine it into our Constitution, making it nearly impossible to ever overturn in the future. So it's very, very serious, and we need all hands on deck. No Ohio voter can be apathetic about this. We have to stand up.
And really quickly here, we have about 30 seconds left. The Ohio Secretary of State confirmed marijuana usage recreationally will be on the same ballot. I know this isn't one of your top issues, but will it make it harder to get the pro-life vote out, do you think?
I think yes and no. I think that unfortunately marijuana obviously is going to bring out all the young men to vote, and abortion is going to bring out all the young women to vote. So we just need to make sure that we're getting all of our people out to vote, all of the churches, all of the Christians and conservatives, that we can really come together on both of these issues and say no.
And believe it or not, saying abortion is murder is not a losing strategy. Lizzie Marbach on the phone with us, former communications director of Ohio Right to Life, a great friend, a Christian firebrand, as the flyer says, as we've discussed. Thank you for joining us today. How can people find you?
Well, thank you for having me on, Josh. I always appreciate it. And you can find me on Twitter, or now known as X, at Lizzie Marbach, like you said, with an IE at the end.
And I'm never going to stop calling it Twitter. Lizzie, thank you for joining us. And appreciate you coming on. I'm sure if you haven't already landed on your feet, you will. Ohio Right to Life is really missing a good one here. So thanks for hopping on with us, and we hope to talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're listening to the Conservative Crusader.